Hello and welcome to a Sunday morning meetup in which I discuss books to read. A is for autobiography. An autobiography is a self-written account of the life of oneself. The word autobiography was first used deprecatingly by William Taylor in 1797 in the English periodical The Monthly Review, when he suggested the word as a hybrid, but condemned it as pedantic. However, its next recorded use was in its present sense by Robert Southey in 1809. Despite only being named early in the 19th century, first-person autobiographical writing originates in antiquity. Roy Pascal differentiates autobiography from the periodic self-reflective mode of journal or diary writing by noting that autobiography is a review of a life from a particular moment in time, while the diary, however reflective it may be, moves through a series of moments in time. Autobiography thus takes stock of the autobiographer's life from the moment of composition. While biographers generally rely on a wide variety of documents and viewpoints, autobiography may be based entirely on the writer's memory. The memoir form is closely associated with autobiography, but it tends, as Pascal claims, to focus less on the self and more on others during the autobiographer's review of his or her life. Autobiographical works are by nature subjective. The inability or unwillingness of the author to accurately recall memories has in certain cases resulted in misleading or incorrect information. Some sociologists and psychologists have noted that autobiography offers the author the ability to recreate history. Spiritual autobiography is an account of an author's struggle or journey towards God, followed by a religious conversion, often interrupted by moments of regression. The author reframes his or her life as a demonstration of divine intervention through encounters with the divine. The earliest example of a spiritual autobiography is Augustine's Confessions. Confessions is the name of the autobiographical work consisting of 13 books by St. Augustine of Hippo, written in Latin between 397 and 400 AD. The work outlines St. Augustine's sinful youth and his conversion to Christianity. Modern English translations of it are sometimes published under the title The Confessions of St. Augustine, in order to distinguish the book from other books with similar titles. Its original title was Confessions in 13 Books, and it was composed to be read out loud, with each book being a complete unit. Confessions is generally considered one of Augustine's most important texts. It is widely seen as the first Western autobiography ever written, and was an influential model for Christian writers throughout the Middle Ages. It tells of the hedonistic lifestyle Augustine lived for a time within his youth, associating with young men who boasted of their sexual exploits, his following and leaving of the anti-sex and anti-marriage Manichaeism in attempts to seek sexual morality, and his subsequent return to Christianity due to his embracement of skepticism and the New Academy movement, developing the view that sex is good and that virginity is better, comparing the former to silver and the latter to gold. Augustine's views subsequently strongly influenced Western theology, and I might add, not always for the good. Professor Henry Chadwick wrote that Confessions will always rank among the great masterpieces of Western literature. I have to admit that it is not one of my favourites, as I found it difficult to read. Augustine had applied the title Confessions to his autobiographical work and Jean-Jacques Rousseau used the same title in the 18th century, initiating the chain of confessional and sometimes racy and highly self-critical autobiographies of the Romantic era and beyond. The Confessions of Jean-Jacques Rousseau was two distinct works, each part consisting of 6 books. Rousseau provides an account of the experiences that shaped his personality and ideas. Rousseau's work is notable as one of the first major autobiographies. Prior to the Confessions, the two great autobiographies were Augustine's own Confessions and St. Teresa's life of herself. However, both of these works focused on the religious experiences of their authors. The Confessions was one of the first autobiographies in which an individual wrote of his own life, mainly in terms of his worldly experiences and personal feelings. Rousseau recognized the unique nature of his work. It opens with the famous words, "I have resolved on an enterprise which has no precedent, and which, once complete, will have no imitator. My purpose is to display to my kind a portrait in every way true to nature, and the man I shall portray will be myself." The Confessions is noted for its detailed account of Rousseau's more humiliating and shameful moments. For instance, Rousseau recounts an incident when, while a servant, he covered up his theft of a ribbon by framing a young girl who was working in the house for the crime. In addition, Rousseau explains the manner in which he disposes of the 5 children he had with Thérèse Levasseur. Rousseau's example was soon followed. Not long after publication, many other writers, such as Goethe, Wordsworth, Stendhal, De Quincey, Casanova, and Alfieri, wrote their own similarly styled autobiographies. Anthony Trollope wrote a famous autobiography. Trollope's autobiography offers a fascinating insight into his literary life and opinions. After a miserable childhood and misspent youth, Trollope turned his life around at the age of 26. By 1860, the hobbledehoy had become both a senior civil servant and a best-selling novelist. He worked for the post office for many years and stood unsuccessfully for Parliament. Best known for the 2 series of novels grouped loosely around the clerical and political professions, the Barsetshire and Palliser series, in his autobiography, Trollope frankly describes his writing habits. His apparent preoccupation with contracts, deadlines and earnings, and his account of the remorseless regularity with which he produced his daily quota of words has divided opinion ever since. Trollope's common-sense approach to his writing is typical of the realistic method he chose to adopt in his novels. This purports to be the only autobiography by a major Victorian novelist. However, it has been argued that the biography produced under the name of Florence Emily Hardy was in fact Thomas Hardy's autobiography. One of the literary world's great deceptions was perpetrated when Thomas Hardy wrote his life in secret for publication after his death as an official biography. Since the true circumstances of his composition have been known, the early life and later years of Thomas Hardy, published over the name of Florence Emily Hardy, has frequently been referred to as Hardy's autobiography. This is the copy that I own. But this is not the whole truth. Florence altered much of what Hardy meant to appear in his biography. Through careful examination of pre-publication texts, Michael Milgate has retrieved the text as it stood at the time of Hardy's final revision. For the first time, the life and works of Thomas Hardy can be read as a true work of autobiography, an addition to the Hardy canon. A memoir is slightly different in character from an autobiography. While an autobiography typically focuses on the life and times of the writer, a memoir has a narrower, more intimate focus on his or her own memories, feelings and emotions. A typical example of this is Casanova's memoirs. The term fictional autobiography signifies novels about a fictional character written as though the character were writing their own autobiography, meaning that the character is the first-person narrator and that the novel addresses both internal and external experiences of the character. Daniel Defoe's Moll Flanders is an early example. Charles Dickens' David Copperfield is another such classic. And J.D. Salinger's The Catcher in the Rye is a well-known modern example of fictional autobiography. Charlotte Bronte's Jane Eyre is yet another example of fictional autobiography. And now for a quick recap, and I'll be back on Thursday with my November mid-month wrap-up.